clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go. Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Also, shout out to Radio Garden State, brand new 24/7 streaming service. It's a full-time radio station based in New Jersey, all about New Jersey, everything from radio to talk to learn about new artists, new restaurants, new experiences in New Jersey, as well as Subway Sports Talk on Fridays at 9 a.m. Cody, I don't even know if I told you about that, but Cody O'Connor is here to talk Mets and Yankees, but Subway Sports Talk is going to be played every Friday on Radio Garden State, which is a great new internet radio 24/7.
Shout out Radio Garden State, man. That's awesome. Congrats to you. That's pretty cool, man. Every Friday. So if you're not listening already, you got even less excuses.
Yeah, and I wish Pat Boyle was here with us today because the man behind Radio Garden State is a former teammate. Actually, not a former teammate of Pat, a former coach of Pat Boyle, because this man, Mike Ham, shout out, he has his own show called Greetings to the Garden State, where he goes all around New Jersey talking to, restaurateurs and artists and musicians and all this fun stuff. And now he's the guy behind this Radio Garden State. He was my teammate my freshman year in college, and then was around finishing out his master's or whatever. And he was a baseball coach when Pat Boyle was a freshman. So he was Pat Boyle's pitching coach. Little full circle for the podcast here. Shout out Mike Ham. Shout out Radio Garden State. Check it out on wherever you are in Instagram, X. He's everywhere. He's out here. And then look it up on online to get there to listen 24/7 whenever you want some New Jersey material. And obviously Subway Sports Talk, we talk New York Mets and New York Yankees, but those are basically the New Jersey sports teams, if you will. So let's get to it and talk a little baseball here with Cody O'Connor. Again, I'm Pete Kennedy on Subway Sports Talk. It's time to talk about the New York Mets code, because it's not wild to say that this team's a playoff team anymore, because they sit here in the wild card position. It's been a wild ride. I've said wild 4 times now. Let's say it one more time. A wild ride for the past month and a half, 2 months here for the Mets playing this really high level baseball. Let me just ask you this. Sitting here today, 47-45, beating the Nationals again in the third wild card spot based off percentage points over the San Diego Padres. What are we even feeling right now, Cody? Are you just cruising on cloud 9?
It's a feeling I certainly didn't think I would feel this baseball season, especially as May came to an end and they were 11 games under 500. And when you dig yourself in that deep of a hole, typically, despite the fact that it's early, it typically writes the season for you. You're going to be done. We thought they could be sellers. They only had 2 months from that point. Obviously the season goes through September, but really the season is going to go until the trade deadline. If you're that far below 500, your shot at being a contender this year, your window is only those next couple months. And Grimace came along, and the Oh My God song by Jose Iglesias, which is a banger of a song, like a legitimate great song, very catchy tune. Alyssa keeps telling me to stop playing it. I'm like, I'll stop playing it when they stop winning. So shout out Marriage.
Yeah.
But no, it's been unbelievable. It's been such a roller coaster. The bullpen still gives me agita watching every night. 6-run leads still don't feel that safe. I'm still, a little concerned with how Mendoza's managed the bullpen, but the lineup's been unreal. The starting rotation has been fantastic all throughout. Francisco Alvarez coming back and catching has made a huge difference for guys like Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea. And all of a sudden, you can see the leaves there for a team that's like, well, they're getting Senga back in a couple days or a couple weeks, and the bullpen should be getting more help. They, paid cash for a couple guys. They've got guys like Sean Reed Foley and Bryce Montes de Oca, if you remember that name, who's in the minors making rehab appearances. So they could be getting some more help there. And all of a sudden, it's like, this feels pretty real. And I don't know that they're full-on buyers, but I sure as hell don't think they should be sellers.
And that's the big thing. It's official now, right? We were having these conversations a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Oh, where do they need to get in order to not be sellers? Where do they need to get in order to be buyers? And now they're at that point where it's definitely not a sell. And it's really not if they're buyers or not, because I think they are buyers. You can tell they just added a bullpen arm already in Maton. It's just to what extent do they go out there and buy, right? Do they go really move pieces to try to get something very impressive to join this team, or is it marginal? Is it just consistent little pieces here and there to try to make this team more efficient, more consistent, all that stuff that we've been talking about? Because it really is a wild situation here. I saw a graphic on May 30th when they still had 23 wins. I think there was 23 and 35 or something to that effect. And then they just started taking off, and they're currently 47 and 45. And even in the past like week or two specifically, Cody, you can tell that they're coming to earth a little bit, but it seems as if their earth is still now a good team. Right? They're not winning 9 out of 10. They're not winning 8 out of 10 every 10-game stretch, because that's ridiculous. Like, that's not even feasible for the best teams in the league to win that many games. But their balance point, their little middle ground here, where they've kind of come back to a normal pace here, is still above average. It's still a good baseball team. If they have a couple bad games, it seems they're still winning 6 or 7 out of 10, which is a huge sign to that this team is not fluky, that it's not about Grimace or the Oh My God song, as great as it is, but it's about the fact that this roster looks complete again. It's about the fact they got a future all-star. I know me and you both believe that catcher back in their lineup and behind the dish. It's about their stars in Lindor and Nimmo playing like stars again. And all of a sudden, the entire lineup looks better. The entire vibes are better. And their baseline is good. Their baseline's above average, and it seems like it's sustainable.
That's a great point, because they did start to not skid, but like you said, they came back to earth a little bit in July. They lost back-to-back really tough games against Washington, a 1-0 game, a game they were up 5-0, and they get a split in that series, and then they split with Pittsburgh, and it was, a little bit of some frustration there too, but they bounced back with another sweep of Washington. Say what you want about Washington, but that team is a little bit more talent and a lot better pitching than I think most people realize. And it took great pitching, great starting pitching from the Mets. It took, hanging around in games and being able to finally break through against a guy today like Mackenzie Gore, who's a really, really good starting pitcher, a really quality starter. Patrick Corbin actually threw well yesterday too. So they're getting contributions from different spots. Martinez and Alonso both have been pretty cold. Both have been slumping. Lindor and Nimmo been on fire, but you're getting the Harrison Bader game. You're getting the Mark Vientos game. You might get, a Tyrone Taylor game right now, and a Jose Iglesias game. So that is the type of thing that makes it feel real, and at least in the lineup makes it feel sustainable, is that it's not relying on one or two guys mashing every day, but that there's a real balance and depth to this lineup.
Yeah, and also, like, to add to that, the entire idea of them like never being dead in the water is legit again, right? Like, for a long time here, the Mets seem like they played tons of extra inning games, and they've played a couple recently. I think they played 3 in a row at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Earlier in the year, you looked at their one-run losses and you looked at their numbers in extra innings. It's like, damn, this team is getting just worked in the moments that matter most, where, you can point to 4 or 5 games and be like, dang, if you can flip those, right? If you had those chances to kind of make that other thing happen instead of the bad thing happening, we could have been looking at this team. I'm talking about weeks ago before they even got back to 500. You're like, damn, this team really could be a 500 team. Well, all those moments are going in their favor now. Like, they really are playing good late. When they're down a few runs, you don't feel like they're out of it. And on the other side, when they're up a few runs, you're still a little bit tense. You're still a little bit nervous, but you never feel like they're out of it. Where in the beginning of the season, when they were up a few runs, you felt like you were out of it. Like, not even the other way around, Cody, right? Like, usually if you're up a few, you feel okay. You're just nervous. For a little bit there with the Mets, like, they were up a few and you were like, no, they're going to lose. They're up 2. That's the worst lead they could possibly have, right? Like, if it was just, it all felt terrible. So now it's all making sense. They're playing good late. They have the consistency and the clutch, ability up and down their roster to make the comebacks, to do something special. And again, it's showing out in the stats. It's coming together, and it's looking like a real team. You don't have to be worried every single night. Be like, God, we need the 7-hitter to come through clutch, or else we're screwed, right? Because that's how the Yankees are feeling right now, and that's how the Mets felt earlier in the year. It was like, God, if somebody doesn't do something incredible or out of the blue here, like how the hell are they going to score runs? And now it's like, no, they can really just manufacture. They can hit for power. They finally have some guys hitting some home runs and some doubles consistently here. So it's all coming together. It all makes sense, and it's really just a beautiful thing. So, Cody, let me ask you this question here. From an offensive perspective, I think it's pretty obvious on the pitching front what is needed. Is there something that you could actually see or want to see changed on this lineup, on this defense, on the offensive side, either way, really? Because right now it's hard to find the right thing to look for. But is there something that you still are longing for on the offensive side?
Well, there's one that I've been screaming for in our group chat. That's DJ Stewart to please be optioned down to AAA. You don't even have to DFA the guy if you like him that much. You could keep him in the system, but it's time to get somebody else those at bats. Tyrone Taylor has hit 2 triples in the two, not even 2 games. It wasn't even 2 full games, but that he's gotten plate appearances in. And I'm not saying he's exactly the answer, but I know Luis Angel Acuna has been raking in AAA, and he's a versatile type of defender. So you can stick him in the outfield. You can play him in the infield. You can kind of play around with that if you want to bring him up. But I am sick of seeing DJ Stewart in the 6 hole. That's my one gripe with the lineup. And then maybe, and this is really just kind of throwing things out, but Jeff McNeil, I'm just curious if there is a trade for him still. That's the one guy who I'm like, if they keep him, I'm okay, because I actually think he's played good defense and he's still hustling and he still seems like he's kind of part of this also. I'm not giving up fully on Jeff, but if there is a deal like hey, we don't have to give up prospects, but we can get a real reliever for Jeff McNeil, get him a new change of scenery, maybe do right by him and bring a guy back. Those are probably the only two. But the biggest one is really I don't want to see DJ Stewart batting 6th in between Alvarez and Vientos ever again. I'm sick of that.
It's just been so rough for him. I mean, earlier in the year, if you looked at OPS or on base percentage, you're like, DJ Stewart's at least doing a job here. Like, yeah, he's not really hitting, but he's on base. He's consistent. He's getting walked a ton. But at some point, like, I don't care that your on base percentage is 160 points higher than your average. Your average is 170, bro. Like, it's not good enough. I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Because you look at the stats, and I know, like, you try to tell yourself in this new age of baseball, like, okay, if the average isn't great, but the on base percentage is up to snuff, like, we can live with that. He's still doing a job. He's still valuable. He's still X. He's still Y. He's still Z. But there's a certain threshold here where the on base percentage is only 320, by the way, but the average is 170. This guy doesn't get hits, man. Like, that's like the type of average like a good pitcher would have back before the DH. Like that's some bad. Like, Ray Ordonez wasn't even touching those numbers, Cody.
I'm sorry, if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw that he has like 5 hits since April. Like, he doesn't play every single day, but he plays relatively consistent enough. Like, he's probably got 100 at bats in that time. 5 hits.
Oh, he has 140 at bats on the season. I just pulled up his game log because now I'm very curious.
Maybe 90 but
since April, you're saying he has 5 hits.
I believe I saw that graphic. Yeah, 5 hits.
I think that's going to be since the end of April.
Yeah.
So in May he had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All right.
And then 1, 2, 3, so 10, 12 though. 12 hits.
Oh,
and
so you know
played,
what? It's since May then, I guess, because that would make sense.
That would make sense. So since in June he had 5. So yeah, that's still terrible though. 12 hits, and he played a lot of these games, dude. I mean, granted, he has a handful of these games are like he pinch hits, and he only has 1 at bat. So you kind of want to give him a little bit of credit there. Like, pinch hitting is always going to be tough. It's never easy, whatever. But I mean, earlier in the year, his average, even when he was like seeming like he was doing something successful for the Mets offense, his average still never got above like 230, and that was in like the first 2 weeks of the season when he was playing every day. He never hit this year, and it seems like he never will hit this year. I'm with you. Get him out of here.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on DJ Stewart and the negative, but the other thing is, and you think of some of the guys Stearns has brought in, like a Harrison Bader, a Tyrone Taylor, like these versatile players. It's like DJ Stewart is a negative defender, not a fast base runner. Like, he doesn't bring other things to the table. Granted, he does have that good eye, and even sometimes when he like flies out, you're like, that was actually a pretty good at bat. Like, but that's about it. And at the end of the day, it's a results driven league, and the results just ain't there, my guy.
He's one of those guys who you do feel like it's Vogelbach-esque. He's the new Vogelbach.
Yes.
Like Vogelbach always
100%.
had good at bats. Great eye on Daniel Vogelbach. Guy didn't hit for power. Everyone thought he had power because he's a big guy. Was never a power hitter in his career. Definitely wasn't for the New York Mets. And Stewart's similar, right? He's not like if he was batting 200 right now in his limited role, but had a dozen home runs. You're like, yo, all right,
Yeah.
guess what? He's batting 200. His on base percentage is 340, but he has a dozen home runs and he swung a game or two. He doesn't have that either. Like he really isn't doing that. So yeah, I'm done with that and agreed with your idea here. Like JD Martinez is the DH. You don't need another guy to be a DH. And yeah, he could play the outfield, DJ Stewart. You don't need him out there. I mean, as soon as Starling Marte comes back, if he comes back, like, bye-bye. Don't need to see him ever again. Like, you just don't. Sorry. So I'm with you on that front. And I think that's a testament to where they are right now as a lineup, that's the only thing you want to complain about, right? Like, even with Starling Marte out, like, Tyrone Taylor's not been amazing, but he's been more than serviceable. He's had some big moments. I like the spark that he kind of brings to the team with his energy and his willingness to kind of like go for it a little bit. Torrens has been on a tear. Sorry, that was bad joke. But he's been on a tear. Like he's hitting the ball super well. I mean, granted, some of his numbers are still inflated from that one game he went absolutely off, but he's playing well. He hits the ball solid. And the rest of the lineup, man, it just all feels pretty dang good. Like there's not much to complain about, and I think that is such a far cry from where we were in April. And even May for that matter. Like we were such a far cry from that where it was this guy stinks, this guy stinks, this guy stinks. Now it's like this guy's good. Very, very different. And now it feels like we made it to a point of consistency.
Yeah, Torrens, another one of the Stearns moves, like the midseason moves, like bringing Vientos back up for whatever you want to say, bringing Torrens in and not just being complacent with Tomas Nido, moving Adrian Hauser into the bullpen. Like the moves that Stearns has made to not stay complacent is a huge part of why this turnaround has happened, along with obviously, guys like Nimmo and Lindor, stepping up, being leaders and all that jazz. Do not undervalue what David Stearns has done mid-season with some of the moves, additions. Deadnail Nunez, who's now their current best reliever, is a guy that they brought up. Like just those types of moves, those little things are I think the differences in what we've seen in years past with these teams.
Those moves have been enormous. And speaking of things that are enormous, we also have some guys who are on the injured list right now in that bullpen specifically. Reed Garrett hits the IL, which you kind of called, unfortunately, that he was being overworked. Obviously, Reed Foley's still out, Drew Smith out. Like they got guys who are out right now. Brooks Raley out, who's Brooks Raley was arguably the best reliever on this team coming into the season. Like they are thin there. They're getting some better performances out of a number of people. Maton joined the team. He looked good today in his inning. Like what is the goal here? Just to keep adding arms or hope that these guys get healthy? Are you expecting some more moves, Cody?
I think I think that's what I hope for is a move or two, but I love that they're throwing this cash out there and not mortgaging any future prospects because we haven't exactly asked this question, but it's the big question, right? Is what's going to happen at the deadline? And I've heard you say it. Ironically, even though we didn't speak about it, we had once again the exact same thought: is that I'm okay with them, and this was weeks ago, but I'm okay with them not completely staying put, but I also don't want them to mortgage any type of assets and do like the Javi Baez 2-month rental either. I'm not sitting here telling you I think this is a World Series team right now, but I do think it's a playoff team. And with a move or two, I'd love to see it play out. Like I am sick of the days, and it's the new school era of like, oh, well, you're not going to win the World Series, so you might as well just sell on the season. It's like, where's your competitive spirit? Like, have you been a part of watching or playing sports? Like, I can't stand that. So I do hope they add maybe a bullpen arm or two and then kind of ride this thing out without making too many other major moves, whether that be selling or buying.
And who would have thought, Cody, that I could make this analogy and it makes so much sense? but you really hope the Mets run themselves like the New York Knicks. Wow. Can you believe that that's a sentence that makes sense in 2024? What a world we live in, Cody. My God. Like, if the New York Mets take the same approach as the Knicks right now, well, maybe not right now, because I'm talking maybe like last year, right? Because the
Yep.
Knicks actually did make that move this year. They made it for the next 2024, 2025 season. But last year and what Leon Rose has been doing, really the Leon Rose era, right? The year 1, year 2, year 3 of Leon Rose, they were making smart moves, marginal moves, getting better, getting consistent, getting in the playoffs, and making it a real competitive team consistently. That's what you want out of the Mets right now. You can't mortgage the future. You actually can take that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back type of trade where, yeah, you might lose somebody you kind of like, but you're getting someone you kind of like as well, who may be in a more position of need. Think of it like the Josh Hart trade. No one was saying the Josh Hart trade was going to be this insane thing that was going to put the Knicks on a playoff run for 2 years straight into the second round. And he didn't do it by himself, but he's the type of player that you want around. He's the type of player that fits the roles and the needs that you needed. And it just makes sense. So, yes, the Mets don't have to go out and get a 4-hole hitter. They don't need to go out and find a replacement for JD Martinez if he's going to end up not coming back next year. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what they should be looking for. They should be looking for a possible DJ Stewart replacement. They should be looking for additional bullpen arms, maybe even a low-end rotation guy. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be in the cards with Cody Sagan coming back, but those are the ideas that you want to have. The New York Knicks forever were famous for going too far too quickly and going for guys who are old, past their prime, or injury-prone, and it not being enough to make an impact. So don't go ahead and do something crazy, but yes, be specific, be marginal, and just try to get a little bit better, a little bit more consistent, a little bit deeper, whatever it may be. And that's how I felt 2 weeks ago. It's how I feel now, even with them being clearly, in the playoffs as we sit here today talking about it all. But that's definitely how I felt then. And it's how I feel now as well.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. I remember talking about in the offseason being like, I'm happy that the Knicks didn't overbid for like a guy that would maybe make them marginally better or is a big splash type of name. And you're exactly right. That's where I hope the Mets are. And it's funny because I've recently been in some ways comparing the trust I have in what Leon Rose does over there in what I trust that David Stearns is going to do. Granted, David Stearns doesn't have that trust built up with New York just yet, but he does have the resume through baseball of to be, one of the better GMs in the league. And Leon Rose has absolutely earned that trust within the Knicks fan base. So with what David Stearns does, I'm going to trust that he's going to make the right decision. I do believe he will. I do think they see the big picture. I think Steve Cohen, not being in his first or second or even third year as the owner, starts to see the big picture. This is why you bring in Stearns, because this decision at the deadline is not one that is going to be an easy one for anyone to make. You're right in the thick of it. I think they made it a little easier maybe to buy, but it's no easy decision because when you want to buy and the fan base is screaming for a winner, you still have to be rational and you have to look at the bigger picture, the future down the line. And I do believe they're going to do that and be smart with this deadline.
And the beauty of Leon Rose and the New York Knicks is how they've moved in silence, right? Like, nobody knew that Mikal Bridges thing was happening until it happened. Mm-hmm. Even though there were rumors forever, there were always going to be the hopes and dreams of that Mikal Bridges trade. And I, for one, was one who got on this podcast over and over again and said, it's not happening. The Nets ain't trading him to the Knicks. It's not going to happen. And Leon Rose moved in silence like a real G and got it done. And if Stearns kind of keeps that same energy, I think that's what this Mets team needed, because I think Steve Cohen had a little bit of what Bill Simmons likes to call the new owner syndrome, where he came in, we're going to win a World Series in the first 5 years, and we're going to go get these stars. We're going to grab Verlander. We're going to grab Scherzer. We're going to get all these dudes, and we're going to go for it right here, right now. Clearly, that didn't work out. Not that they shouldn't have done it or they could have done something different. I still think it was a reasonable thing at the time it happened, but there was no moving in silence for the New York Mets over the last couple of years. And right now, it feels like they're a team that can move in silence, right? Can get that guy in Maton who's a fine reliever, right? He's not going to go out there and throw a 1.1 ERA and strike out, 29 guys in 17 innings. That's okay. but you need a guy to eat more innings. You need a guy to be consistent who you can kind of trust at least a little bit. And that's what the Mets are doing. So, all right, last question on the Mets, Cody. We have to touch up base on this one before we move on to the New York Yankees here. We didn't speak at all about the All-Star selections. So Pete Alonso makes it. Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo did not. And I was surprised to see New York people and not New York people alike kind of raising their eyebrows and saying, wait, what? Lindor didn't make the All-Star team? Brandon Nimmo did not make the All-Star team? And I assumed that was going to be just Mets fans crying from their hill saying, our guys are playing great. Look at what we've done. We deserve X and Y and Z. But I saw people who aren't even Mets fans, people who aren't even New Yorkers, talking about Lindor and Brandon Nimmo and their possible, stakes in this All-Star game, or deserving, I can't think of the word right now. I'm kind of on the IL right now. But you know what I'm trying to get at here. So what say you about Lindor and Nimmo not making it and Alonso making it? Were you upset as other people with Lindor and Nimmo first and foremost?
Yeah, the fact that it was both of them. And I will say, Lindor, like when you look around and you look who the All Stars are, it's kind of hard to argue that any of them should not be one. Like, if your best argument's Trey Turner because he was injured for so much of the year, it's like he's also hitting like 330 and just been unreal. So you really can't make the argument for him. Ellie De La Cruz has been unbelievable as well. The one stat that I know fans love with Lindor is his wins above replacement, which is a good stat, but it's also a bit of a you've played every game, and that helps your wins above replacement stat. And he's also behind Ellie De La Cruz in that as well. And then CJ Abrams, I mean, I don't know that you can make an argument that Lindor is deserving over him. CJ Abrams has been just as impressive, and he's done it for the whole year. Lindor had the cold start. Nimmo surprises me, though. Nimmo is I think it's because he is so under the radar and he's not flashy and his numbers don't always pop, but his value, as Mets fans know, is insurmountable. He's moved the ground. He was leading the team in RBIs as the leadoff spot. He's continued that and now been raking as the two hitter. I thought one of them should have made it. I do think both of them will end up making it after the Tatis and Mookie Betts replacements. Mookie Betts was one of the other shortstops come in. And then with the Alonso front, I have a question. I was pretty sure of this. I was talking to my dad and brothers actually earlier. Is the new rule that one member of each team has to be there, right? Each team has to have a representative. Is that it?
That is definitely still the rule, yes.
Okay. So I guess it makes some sense, Alonso, because of the position. But as far as in the lineup, value and who's made the biggest impact, Alonso, you could argue, is like fourth or fifth most impactful Mets in the lineup right now. Like Lindor and Nimmo are definitely above him. I think Vientos has been above him. I think JD Martinez has been above him. And if Alvarez hadn't been injured for so long, you'd make the argument that Alvarez was as well. And it's not to throw dirt or shade at Pete Alonso, but it's nowhere near his best year. And so it's just like, oh, okay, Pete Alonso's an all-star again, but he's not the most deserving guy on the team. But because of the positions and the rules and whatnot, he's the one to go. And again, I do think Nimmo and Lindor will both be joining him shortly as they announce the reserves.
Yeah, and it's tough because you look at like the competition for Alonso, and you could argue he's like fourth or fifth in first basemen in the National League, right? Like he's definitely behind Bryce Harper's numbers. He's behind Freddie Freeman's numbers. He's behind Michael Bush's numbers, and he's behind Christian Walker's numbers. So just from a pure number standpoint, you could argue he's the fifth best first baseman offensively in the National League right now. Whereas you think about the shortstop pool for the National League, and you mentioned that all the guys who are definitely above, or not definitely above, but above Francisco Lindor right now. Mookie Betts for sure. CJ Abrams had a fantastic year, and he's played 80 something games as well. It's not like he's missed any time. The Trey Turner thing I do get, because he's played so few games. Like he's not even eligible currently for league leaders, Trey Turner, which is that's something that only really happens in baseball. You don't see that often. in other sports be a topic of conversation, but like, oh, this guy doesn't even qualify for league leaders. Like if he has the highest average right now, he wouldn't win the batting title because he doesn't qualify. So that to me is a reasonable argument for Lindor over Turner. But if you look at the pool of people, Lindor is much closer to CJ Abrams and Ellie De La Cruz than Pete Alonso is to Freeman and Harper and Christian Walker. So that to me makes a lot of sense. And obviously, if you kind of segment it out, the last 2.5 months for Lindor, he's been probably the best shortstop in baseball. So that's a little bit more of an argument for me. I do agree 1-to-1 Lindor to Alonso. Lindor makes more sense. And 1-to-1 shortstop to first baseman, Lindor makes more sense. But that's how the cookie crumbles. I do agree, however, that the biggest one is, in fact, Brandon Nimmo, because Brandon Nimmo isn't just like having a good season for the Mets. Like he's top 25 in the MLB in OPS in the MLB, right? So just wipe out all the American League guys. And he's really, I don't have it in front of me I can probably edit it on the fly here, but he's probably top 12 in OPS in the National League overall, right? And that's including all positions. So the Nimmo thing is definitely the biggest omission to me. And the Lindor thing stings the most because he hasn't had that all-star appearance yet for the Mets. And he's been playing so damn good for what feels like such a big portion of why the Mets are in the wild card right now.
Yep, we're on par. I'm trying to look up National League OPS leaders as we speak, but I don't really have.
Nimmo's he's 13th. So I said 12th, and I was dang close. He's 1 point off from being 12th. So he's ranked 13th.
Abrams right above him.
With CJ Abrams right above him. But also look at the people above him. You have Ohtani, who's a DH, Marcell Ozuna, who's a DH, Betts, who's listed as a shortstop, obviously, Freeman, Marte, Bush, Walker, Will Smith, and CJ Abrams. All of those guys are not outfielders. The only outfielders above Nimmo in OPS in the National League are Jerickson Profar and Christian Yelich. That's it.
Both happen to be left fielders, too.
Both do happen to be left fielders. I mean, Nimmo obviously, can play other spots, but yes, both left fielders. But yeah, he's the third highest OPS in the National League for outfielders, which again makes his case individually the best one for any of the Mets, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was more of my frustration. It was like you kind of grouped Nimmo and Lindor together, but it was like really like both of them aren't all-stars. That kind of threw me, and it frustrated me because I think they at least one of them was deserving, and I do think it's Nimmo.
Yeah, I do happen to agree there as well. And he's even hitting for power this year. Like, he's not been a guy who's, like, hit for a ton of power in his career. Him at 16 home runs. Right now, though,
because they've been...
Yeah, and he's actually, like, stealing bases a little more this year, too. Like, he's only got 8, but, like, he's not in his career, people always haven't had, like, the purest understanding of who Brandon Nimmo was, I think. Like, he was pretty fast, but he never really stole a lot of bags. He's pretty big, but he never really hit a lot of home runs. His on-base percentage was always his biggest strength of, like, what a great eye. He's on base all the time, and he's just a solid all-around hitter. And this year at age 31, it seems like he's entering this peak Nimmo kind of player where he's combining the speed he's always had with the ability to steal some bags. Like, he's one stolen bag away from his career high. Like, that's ridiculous, right? He's also on pace to hit the most home runs he's ever hit in a season. Mm-hmm. So all in all, this is Nimmo's probably best year of his career. Maybe not from like a batting average perspective, from a productivity perspective. He is absolutely about to smoke all of his other numbers.
And at the end of the day, that matters so much more than an all-star vote, at least to us as Mets fans. Correct.
And I think that's a good thing, man. Like you said, chip on the shoulder. Who needs the all-star thing? Get your rest. Maybe they'll get there anyway with the injuries, and that'll be that. All right. Cody O'Connor and Pete Kennedy here on Subway Sports Talk. We got our Mets talk in. Any last words on the Mets, Cody, before we move to the Yankees, or are you feeling good right now?
Feeling good, man. Let's go Mets. Keep this thing rolling. Let me keep enjoying watching you play baseball because I love doing it.
There you go. Beautiful stuff. So, again, Subway Sports Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you watch or listen to podcasts, as well as on Radio Garden State. Shout out Radio Garden State. You can always listen to us there on Fridays and check out all the other content that are streaming live on Radio Garden State 24/7. But now let's move on to the New York Yankees, Cody. And for all the positivity we spoke about with the Mets there, and yeah, of course, we tried to pick out our little holes of improvement that the Mets needed. And yes, the Yankees are still a better team overall. They are still 18 games, or now, I don't know if this refreshed yet, maybe 17 games above 500. So they're still obviously in a very good spot. And yes, it is 17 games over 500 now. It just feels not as clean currently in the Bronx. It feels like it's a struggle to get the runs on the board. It feels like it's been a more of a struggle for the pitchers to keep the runs off the board. And all things are not as easy in the Bronx, despite having two of the five best hitters in baseball right now. So when it comes to the New York Yankees, Cody, it's a different conversation from the Mets, despite their standings and their win total at the moment. Because right now, this lineup is still very scary and very, very, very hit or miss when you go up and down. And now you're looking at the Yankees lineup as opposed to the Mets from April and saying, please, 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 can the 7-hole do something special here to give us some needed runs, some needed support for Judge and Soto, who, if they don't seem to do it, nobody seems to do it. So where do you sit here with the New York Yankees on July 11th, July 12th, as they approach the deadline and their hopes of being a World Series contender?
Well, I think this is something important to keep in mind for both fan bases. Is baseball is such a long season. It's a roller coaster. For the Mets, it's been pretty good. April, 0-5 to like a hot streak to a cold streak, and now the Yankees are hitting a real lull. And I think for them, it's probably the perfect time for the All-Star break to just kind of regroup and to see exactly what it is that they need. I think anybody watching knows that it's at least one other bat. Maybe it's two good bats or one great bat, whatever you want to do with that. But they need to extend this lineup. Stanton being out hurts them. It should not kill them. Like it feels similar to how Francisco Alvarez going out. It's like, I know this is going to hurt, but it should not kill. And right now, the Yankees lineup, after I guess Ben Rice, with the way they've changed it around, he's been, a really fun watch and had a nice swing. And he's been, something to add to their lineup. But typically after Aaron Judge, it's like, and I felt this playing against them, it was like once you got past Judge, and that was when he was in the 3-hole, you're like, coast is clear and you can really attack these guys. And like, it was just clear, like if there's any spot where Judge or Soto can do damage, you just have to pitch around them and you can kind of attack some of their other guys. And that is something that they obviously have to address. They will address, I'm sure of it, because they're too good of a team and too good of a staff, especially with Garrett Cole back, too good of a bullpen, too proud of an organization to do anything but go after some type of hitters, maybe a Jesse Winker or some other guys like that. But that's how it felt playing against them. That's how it feels watching them. It's just like once you get through Judge, there's not too much to be scared of, and that's not a good recipe to score runs, and that's been their big hang-up right now.
It feels so weird, Cody, with the Yankees right now because typically, I should say, even when they're struggling, they're finding a way to play close to 500, right? Like even when they're not right, even when they're on a downturn, they're playing close to 500 baseball. Before this last stretch of games here, basically to like mid-June, right? The Yankees don't lose multiple games in a row. They occasionally they lose two in a row, maybe, right? Like maybe they lose a series and they lose two in a row, but you so often see them bounce back. You so often see them find a way to win 2 out of 3 in a series. You so often see them fight and claw and even when games are not supposed to win. And even in like, I see like back in May, they lost 2 to Seattle, then they beat Seattle twice and they split the series. Now, since mid-June here, you have multiple losing streaks of 3 or 4 games. And that's just so un-Yankee like. You have the one where they lost 2 to Baltimore, 1 to Atlanta, both very good teams. Then they lose 1 to Atlanta at the end of that series, lose 2 to the Mets, 1 to the Blue Jays. That's 4 in a row. Then they get swept by the Cincinnati Reds. The Yankees don't get swept. It just doesn't happen. It's something that is so strange to who they are. And whatever they are looking for to try to just like clog the wound, to try to stop the bleeding, it's not coming right now. And it all goes back to that lineup, just like you expressed it. I put out a TikTok and Instagram that said the exact same thing you just said. Giancarlo Stanton not going out going out should not affect them the way that it did. It shouldn't kill them, and it did. But you look at it, and I saw people in my comments on TikTok being like, no, the lineup's going to be fine. They're going to work themselves out. They got to get this pitching staff right. They got to get their strengths to be their strengths again. And I'm like, dude, I don't know about you. I'm not a Yankees fan. You probably watch more Yankees than me. Obviously, the Mets and Yankees play at the same time more often than not, and I watch more Mets than I do Yankees. But I watch the Yankees. I have faith their pitching staff's going to figure things out. I have faith, like the Yankees have done year after year after year after year, to put together a good bullpen. Like, I'm worried about this offense, and this isn't a new issue, Cody. That's the thing that blows my mind here. This is the same issue they had last year. When Aaron Judge got hurt last year, they fell off a freaking cliff. When he missed time, they were nothing. And he somehow is so incredible last year that he helped them stay alive for so long. And he's doing it again right now. But this is not a new problem. This isn't all of a sudden their lineup's not strong. It wasn't strong last year. It's not strong now. I'm like, it's so hard to get irate about this team being 17 games over 500, but Yankees fans are feeling it as well. There are some Yankee fans out there who will be a little bit more rough and say like, no, we're fine. We're the Yankees. We're going to get it right. To you Yankee fans, I say you should probably be a little bit more worried. To the Yankee fans who are worried, for once, because I'm usually the Met fan saying like, can you Yankee fans freaking relax? You guys are fine. You're going to win 95 games. I'm not feeling that way right now, Cody. And normally, as you and I are similar here as Mets fans, it's so easy for us to be like, Yankee fans complaining again. These freaking annoying ass Yankee fans and their 95 wins. They could never be freaking happy. But no, now I think you should not be happy. Like, I'm actually at that point here. And if you've listened to Subway Sports Talk over the past 5 years or 4 years or 3 years or last year, whatever it is, like, you should know, and hopefully you do know, I'm not one of these Mets fans who's like, nah, the Yankees stink. Like, I don't do that. I'm often defending the Yankees because they're a team that I wish my team was more like when it comes to roster building and things of that nature. Right here, right now, there are real problems, and you should be concerned that this offense doesn't have it on the team to get better.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter recently that made me laugh because obviously the Yankees are in this horrible stretch, and it was like, I'm convinced that Yankees fans couldn't last a week, being a Mets fan, and it's like, yeah, we pretty much go through this like a couple times a year typically. Like, this is uncharted territory for them, but it is real. It's real problems, and it's most Yankees fans I know are like, just, I don't want to watch this team. They're unwatchable. They're not fun. They're not enjoyable. They don't have energy. Like, and it feels. I always am going to go back to the Mets because I'm a Mets fan. But as we talked about Mets getting contributions from different places, it feels like the Yankees are having like woes from all these different places. Like, it was not that long ago that Anthony Volpe did not hustle his way home, and they DJ LeMahieu got tagged out in between on a double play. Run doesn't score. Trent Grisham in center field. That was a joke of an attempt at fielding a ground ball and letting a guy right in front of you go for a double when your team's already struggling the way it is. It's like, you got to find ways to win, and they're not finding ways to lose, but finding ways to look like they don't care, they're uninterested. And I'm not saying that's the case, but from the viewer's perspective, from watching on TV, it is how it appears. And so I don't know if that's Aaron Boone. I'm not saying we're calling for his job. It's just something has to change because, again, a lot of the Yankees fans I talk to are at a point where they're like, I am turning it off, or it's hard to watch, or something along those lines. And it will change. That baseball has that ebbs and flows, but they're starting to get to a point where it's like the division's in question, and all of a sudden that wild card comes up pretty quickly from being the top spot to we're fighting for a wild card because the American League sure as hell ain't the National League. There's a lot of teams that are on the rise or who are playing really good ball, like Boston, who's was beating up on them a little bit, and Houston, who is all the way back right now and probably going to win their division if I had to bet on it, but they're right there in the mix again as well. So something has to change. I'm assuming it's coming at the deadline for them.
You assume so, right? And it's so hard, like as a non-Yankee fan, sometimes because you want to tread lightly, especially as us as Mets fans. And
Hmm.
again, we both keep doing the same thing, but it's a better way to rationalize our feelings about this Yankee team. Right now, we are sitting here saying the Yankees have a lot of issues, and there are Yankee fans listening to this podcast being like, "Yeah, says the team who just made it over 500, like
Yes.
freaking losers."
Yep.
And you're right, like you're right. Hands up, you're right. Like I get it. Your team is still better and better positioned than the Mets are. I get it, but when you look at it like realistically, this Yankees team is not up to their standard, right? It's the same concept. Who are we? Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember who we were talking about. What basketball player about like the standard that they set for themselves, and I can't remember. We were just having this conversation on the pod a
You and
couple weeks
I.
ago, but I think it might have been you and I. It doesn't particularly matter, but it's basically like, all right, are the Yankees still in a good place? Yes. But based upon their own standards that they set for themselves,
Right.
they are not where they should be. Right. And that's the difference here, right? It's not about, you know, them, their record versus the Mets record or their record even versus the Red Sox record at this point in time. It's about looking forward. It's about trying to see what's going to happen in the second half of the year. And if trades don't happen, which, Cashman's kind of a mixed bag here.
Hmm.
We've seen him pull the trigger big occasionally, but it's more far and few between. And I agree, Cody. Most of the people in my life who are Yankee fans, they're very big on this team's pathetic. I don't want to watch it. Like, oh, they're down 4, turning off the game. I'm done with this. I'm not watching this crap right now. And that's a problem. And I'm not saying that the Yankees need to find their grimace because I think Yankee fans resent the Mets having fun and doing silly
Yeah.
stuff and having energy because of it. They really do. And I get it.
Yeah.
It's stupid. The Mets seem to have a different gimmick every year and it fades away. And it is what it is. But guess what? It was a lot of damn fun.
Yep.
And whether it actually gave the Mets energy or just faux gave the Mets energy, it was good while it lasted. The Yankees are desperate right now for something special. They're desperate for something to give them a boost. And yet, some people will sit here and be like, yeah, well, easy for you to care so hard when your team is now 2 games over 500. Big whoop. Like, yes, dude, I get it. You're right. I don't care, though, because I feel confident in saying this because I've been here before saying to calm down, you're going to be fine. I'm not saying you're going to be fine now. Not saying it. There's too many bad players. It's not about mediocre players right now. There are bad players up and down this team. OPS plus, a stat I use frequently across the MLB. It's a very simple way, and I did a whole podcast on this about a month ago when it came to Judge and Soto and how incredible they've been as two individuals. OPS plus, for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically the league average for OPS. Not everybody's familiar, Cody, with what a good OPS is. You and I might have a good grasp on it now because we're up and
Hmm.
down the stats and we're looking at Baseball Reference. Like, we know a high 700 is pretty good. We know the 800s are very good. We know 900s is awesome. We know 1,000 is fantastic. Well, OPS plus makes you not have to know if 800, 900, or 1,000 is good, great, or better. OPS plus means 100 is average, and anything above 100 is above average. The entire lineup besides Judge and Soto is below 100. And I'm taking out Stanton because he's not on the team right now. And if you want to take Ben Rice, go ahead. He's played 20 games. He's above 100. Everybody else, Austin Wells, 83. Rizzo, he's out, but 77. Torres, 80. Volpe, 89 when he was above 100 OPS plus for a long time this season. Now he's dropped all the way down to 89. Oswaldo Cabrera, 75. Verdugo, 93. He was above 100 for a lot of the season. Drop. Trevino, 95. LeMahieu, 51. He's been terrible. He's bad. Trent Grisham can't hit 176 average, 82 OPS plus. Like, nobody is doing a above average job for the New York Yankees. Nobody.
That is the type of thing too that puts more pressure on your starting rotation, a little bit more on your bullpen, and I think you kind of can see it a little bit there. I agree with you. I don't think their starting rotation is a problem. I don't think it will continue to be if it has been which I don't think it's been that bad anyway. I think it's way more about the lineup, and that's why we're talking about it. The other thing you keep mentioning that I hope people are clear on, yeah, we're not sitting here comparing the Mets and the Yankees. Like, I always would say this to Yankees fans, like, you can do what you want to try and bring down the Mets and make your arguments good for you and in this moment. But I always say, like, you go behind closed doors and you just talk to a Yankees fan, and you're both probably panicking over there, even though you're putting on this bravado for us Mets fans. We're not trying to compare the two franchises or where they're at. The Yankees in this huge skid are still, 15 games above 500. But this is also a fact, and I used the Subway Sports Talk Twitter to find this because I knew someone was going to tweet this because this graphic is just, it's alarming, and I knew it was going to be there somewhere. Yankees have not won any of their past 8 series, haven't won back-to-back games since June 11th and 12th, and they're 7-18 in their last 25. It's not that small of a sample size, and it is an alarming amount of losses racked up in that small amount of time. Because they were so good early, they still have the cushion, but All-Star break probably could not come at any better time for a team that absolutely needs to regroup, figure out what they can do, figure out, like you said, where their magic can come from or where they can make additions to, lengthen this lineup, and then go from there.
And frankly, with the Brian Cashman side of it all, who I've defended over and over again because it's beautiful to see a 90-plus win team year after year after year after year, and Yankee fans don't always appreciate it. Some of them do, some of them don't, and that's okay. I get it. Your standard is different than most. It's fair. I get it. Like, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, going 9-8-1 is not good, right? 9-8-1, that doesn't make sense. 9-8, 9-8, yeah, 9-8. There's no 18 games, not yet. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs right now, going 9-8 doesn't cut it. If you're the Yankees, winning 89 games doesn't cut it. I get it. But Brian Cashman, I've defended for a long time. You can very much understand here now that he's not always the guy to pull the big trigger. He doesn't do it. And frankly, I think it's a fool's errand for Yankees fans to think that he's going to go out and trade for somebody and give up key assets for somebody that he has to pay or the Steinbrenners have to pay. Because we know the Soto number. And we know how confident Yankee fans are right now that Soto is going to be re-signed by the Yankees. And I hear a lot of people on the fan, when I'm working on the fan on weekends, I hear a lot of our hosts say, any player that the Yankees have wanted, they've gotten them. Andrew Kalanya said it on this podcast last week. Any players who the Yankees truly put their mind to, they get them. They maintain. They keep. They bring them back. They pay them when it comes down to it. That's great. But guess what? If that means X for Soto, that means you might not get Y. You might not get the other thing, because paying for a rental right now means giving up people who could help you tomorrow for something today. And if there's someone that needs to be paid at the end of this year, I do not see Brian Cashman pulling that trigger. I don't. He hasn't done it. And the few times he has done it, it's been more of the the middling type of person. And I hate using Joey Gallo because it went so horribly wrong for the Yankees. But it's been more of the Joey Gallo type. It hasn't been the Pete Alonso type. And I'm just using him because he's a guy that people still put on the trade block, even though I don't think he is at all. But Cashman hasn't been willing to just pull that trigger. So if you're a Yankees fan saying, don't worry, we're going to get somebody who's going to bolster this lineup, I don't know where that's coming from. Because unless that person is under contract for years to come, I don't think the Yankees pull the trigger on it, Cody.
It's a tough situation, though. Like, we just talked about it with the Mets, but they're good enough to think, at least they were, that they could win a World Series this year. I mean, going up until that point in June, it's like this team is rolling. They're clicking on all cylinders. They're a World Series team. And does a month sway you so much that you no longer buy at the deadline? What does buying at the deadline look like? Like you said, are you really willing to give up pieces for a 2-month rental? All the decisions that Brian Cashman has to make, and I don't know, maybe he still has a lot of time, but I know, again, Yankees fans year in and year out, as the season doesn't end the way they want it to, are looking at 2 places, Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman. Every single year, it's a conversation, and at some point, it's going to be the end of the road for one of, if not both of those guys. And so I wonder if Cashman feels any of that pressure at this deadline.
I don't think Cashman feels an ounce of pressure, Cody. I think Boone probably finally feels the pressure.
Mm.
I think this is the year where Boone has to do something. I know we've probably said that 3 years in a row, but I do believe the Boone factor is something this year. I don't think Cashman is worried for a second. I think Cashman takes this job as long as he wants it, dude. Because for whatever you want to say about his downfalls, his upsides are fantastic. And you got to imagine the Steinbrenners freaking love him because he doesn't overspend. He's not breaking their pockets.
Yeah.
He's doing what they want him to do, and he's doing it at a successful rate, whether it's the Yankee standard or just the Major League standard. He's a successful general manager. So I don't think Cashman feels the pressure, but I do think Boone should feel the pressure. And God damn it, I hate listening to the man's press conferences. Oh, just horrible. Just horrible. Sounds like me with my hurt tooth right now. Like constantly just like, Judgy, you're gonna check on him. Yeah, it's so annoying.
Boone,
I can't.
Boone
I'm
is
over
not. He's not podcasting in the condition that you're in. I'm telling you, he's not gritty like you, Pete. Few are. So don't even put him in the same breath right now.
I really should have said something earlier on in this podcast for all of our YouTube listeners and anyone who's listening in audio. It doesn't matter if you're audio only right now. Hopefully I sound fine, but I'm battling a tooth issue. I have a chunk of my forehead missing, and I have a big gash that's covered by a Band-Aid on the middle of my nose. So I really am grinding through this right now. But yeah, so anyone who's listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, I should say, sorry that I look crazy. I look like a psychopath right now. I have gotten many a number of looks in like the supermarket this week, been like, "You good, bro? you good over here?" I'm like, yeah, I've been better. Been better. Oh well. But yeah, that's the Yankees talk, man. We'll see what they do at the deadline, and like you said, the All-Star break coming at the perfect time. Hopefully, they could maybe steal 2 against Baltimore in their final series here. That'll be huge going into the break. Just feeling a little bit better about themselves. But Baltimore is a damn good team, man. We know that. They're no one to be messed with. So it's not going to be easy to just say, yeah, they're going to win 2 out of 3 against Baltimore. No, it's not going to be easy. Not at all. And we'll see if they make the trades. We'll be covering here on Subway Sports Talk. But before we go, Cody, real quick, on our New York Giants, I have not had the chance yet, Cody, and this will be our last talk before we say goodbye. I haven't had the chance yet to tune into Hard Knocks, and I know the format is a little bit different from our classic Hard Knocks that we know and love, but it is our New York Giants, who you and I know and love and really appreciate, root for. Maybe not appreciate so much, but root for. So pitch me. You've been watching. Is this something that I need to put on my list ASAP? Because there's a lot of good content out there, Cody. Do I need to tap into the Hard Knocks of the New York Giants right now? Yay or nay?
Especially as a Giants fan, I would say yes. And I'm telling you, I don't really watch Hard Knocks. Like I've tuned in here and there typically, but if it wasn't my team, I wouldn't be watching this one. But if you've seen even some of the clips that have come out from the most recent episode, the first episode was fine, it kind of gets your feet wet. But this format of the off season, and they're leaning into the Saquon conversations and how this all went down, which is they're just kind of getting into that now. But they also brought in all of the quarterbacks. So you saw Drake May, you saw Jaden Daniels, you saw Caleb Williams in an interview style with Brian Daboll, and him kind of just putting them on the spot, pressure cooker questions, like. And I'm watching it and I'm like, damn, like this is intense, like type of thing where I'm like, that's among many reasons, my talent being the first, but the second reason I'm not an NFL quarterback is because I would shit my pants in that room on that conversation. He's just hitting them with questions about formations. What's your favorite play? When are you going to go to it? I thought it was a really cool in-depth look at Daboll and like some of his wizardry and some of his smarts, and especially on the offensive side, and how those quarterbacks started to handle it. He's just posing questions like different points, like ask about the family real quick. What was that play you said again? Like just hitting them with it over and over, very constant, but like, you know what? I get why you ask him that, because you need your quarterback, especially in New York, to be able to handle that type of pressure, and you're going to get a lot to learn. So you learned a good amount about him. I thought if you were, not the biggest, like I'm watching every press conference and all that about who our coach is, who Brian Daboll is, you learn a lot about him. You learn some about some of the different quarterback prospects, a little bit of the receivers. And I really like this part of what all the decisions were and this process more than, hey, we're going to look at training camp and how guys are gelling. I think this is probably a cooler version of Hard Knocks. And so obviously I do recommend that you check it out, whether you're a Giants fan or not. I think it's pretty damn cool if you're just a football fan.
I think you sold me, Cody. I'm a Hard Knocks guy for reference, so I do typically watch. Whether it's the Browns or the Jets or the Lions, whoever it is, I'm typically watching Hard Knocks. There's just been so much content right now. We got House of the Dragon, we got the Boys, we got the Bear, we got the Mets and the Yankees. So we do have a lot of things cooking at this point in July, which is not always the case. But I definitely will get onto Hard Knocks, and now I'm more excited about it because of your little recommendation there. So very exciting. Football around the corner. I got a text from a fantasy football chat today trying to lock in a date for the fantasy draft. I'm like, wow, we're here already? That was damn quick. How about it?
Yeah.
Well, let's go. Let's freaking go.
That's the other thing about Hard Knocks is it was one of those first times where I was like, oh, okay, football's almost back. Like it's time. And speaking of fantasy, I was starting to kind of try to remember. I'm like, who am I keeping again this year in fantasy? I'm like, who do I have? And I can knock down. I got Jahmyr Gibbs, but I don't remember if I still have Jamar Chase. But the wheels are starting to turn. Football's around the corner. Futures are going to be around the corner. So Hard Knocks is a good way to kind of be like, oh, yeah, football's back. We're almost there.
Fantastic. I'm feeling it as well. I'm a little nervous, though. I'm going on my honeymoon for 2 Sundays of the football season in September. I'm going to miss. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, right? Listen. What time is it going to be? What time is 1 o'clock Eastern in Italy?
Hey, you guys get Red Zone out here?
Yeah, somewhere's got to have something
do it,
planned.
right? You could get the DirecTV version and just do Siciliano. Is that his name?
There you go. Andrew Siciliano. Yeah, I think so. Is he still doing it, though? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
But yeah, let's just say Sunday Night Football may be taking place at 3 in the morning in Italy. Maybe I just happen to be up at that time. Who's to say, really? I don't know. But I'm excited. And also, we'll end this podcast by saying congratulations to you, Cody, on your marriage.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you enjoyed your honeymoon. Beautiful stuff, man. Congrats.
Yep. Thank you very much. And speaking of which, I was admittedly watching the Mets during my honeymoon, time Melissa's getting ready. I did take my phone out onto the lazy river with me during a day game once. So it's doable, Pete. I don't know that you can watch, 7 hours commercial free, but I think you could try to, get some eyes on it some way, but not in the. Yeah, don't do it in spite of Amanda. Make sure she's okay with it.
Well, you're absolutely right, though. There's always that point on vacation where the lady's getting ready, and they take about an hour 20 to get ready.
Yeah.
And, us gentlemen here, shower, shave, little spat, boom, 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 and all of a sudden we're done in 9 minutes or something like that. You got some time. You can kick back on the couch, crack open a beer, maybe a cocktail, who's to say, and then you enjoy yourself a little commercial free. How about it? Why not? All right. Good stuff, though. Cody O'Connor, Pete Kennedy on Subway Sports Talk, on your Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube, also live on Radio Garden State at, I believe, 9 a.m. on Fridays. So hopefully if someone's listening to this, they're like, yep, you were on at 9, and now it's 10, and now you're done. So, yeah, cheers. Thanks for listening wherever you may listen. Don't forget to support the podcast any way you can, even if, you're not tapping in every episode, but you're hearing me say these words. Drop a little review, drop a little couple stars, and tell us that you appreciate us. It goes a long way, helps us out a ton. We appreciate you all the same. So shout out to y'all. Shout out to Cody O'Connor and Pete Kennedy. That's all we got. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.